Hello, and welcome back. I'm sorry for all of these weird things that are happening in the internet, but we are back. Something's happening with my internet, and we're going to fix it tomorrow. But we're about to keep on reading the part where Harry just realized that Voldemort is after the wand also. If something happens with the internet, I guess we'll just deal with it, and if it keeps on happening, I'll fix it, and we'll read another time. But we'll try again, huh? All right, let's keep going. He turned his back on their strained, incredulous faces. He knew it was the truth. It all made sense. Voldemort was not seeking a new wand. He was seeking an old wand, a very old wand indeed. Harry walked to the entrance of the tent, forgetting about Ron and Hermione as he looked out into the night, thinking. Voldemort had been raised in a Muggle orphanage. Nobody could have told him the tales of Beedle the Bard when he was a child, any more than Harry had heard them. Hardly any wizards believed in the Deathly Hallows. Was it likely that Voldemort knew about them? Harry gazed into the darkness. It's working. Okay, good. Awesome. If Voldemort had known about the Deathly Hallows, surely he would have sought them, done anything to possess them. 3 objects that made the possessor master of death? If he had known about the Deathly Hallows, he might not have needed Horcruxes in the first place. Didn't the simple fact that he had taken a hallow, and turned it into a Horcrux demonstrate that he did not know this last great wizarding secret? Which meant that Voldemort sought the Elder Wand without realizing its full power, without understanding that it was one of 3. For the wand was the hallow that could not be hidden, whose existence was best known. The bloody trail of the Elder Wand is splattered across the pages of wizarding history. Harry watched the cloudy sky, curves of smoke gray and silver sliding over the face of the white moon. He felt lightheaded with amazement at his discoveries. He turned back into the tent. It was a shock to see Ron and Hermione standing exactly where he had left them, Hermione still holding Lily's letter, Ron at her side looking slightly anxious. Didn't they realize how far they had traveled in the last few minutes? "This is it," Harry said, trying to bring them inside the glow of his own astonished certainty. "This explains everything. The Deathly Hallows are real, and I've got 1. Maybe 2. He held up the snitch. "And you know who's chasing the 3rd. But he doesn't realize. He just thinks it's a powerful wand." "Harry," said Hermione, moving across to him and handing him back Lily's letter. "I'm sorry, but I think you've got this wrong. All wrong. But don't you see, it all fits." "No, it doesn't," she said. "It doesn't, Harry. You're just getting carried away." "Please," she said, as he started to speak. "Please, just answer me this. If the Deathly Hallows really existed, and Dumbledore knew about them, knew that the person who possessed all 3 of them would be Master of Death, Harry, why wouldn't he have told you? Why?" He had his answer ready. "But you said it, Hermione. You've got to find out about them for yourself. It's a quest." "But I only said that to try and persuade you to come to the Lovegoods," cried Hermione in exasperation. "I didn't really believe it." Harry took no notice. Dumbledore usually let me find out stuff for myself. He let me try my strength, take risks. This feels like the kind of thing he'd do. Harry, this isn't a game. This isn't practice. This is the real thing, and Dumbledore left you very clear instructions. Find and destroy the Horcruxes. That symbol doesn't mean anything. Forget the Deathly Hallows. We can't afford to get sidetracked." Harry was barely listening to her. Well, she's right in a regard, but at the same time, he did give them the objects, but that doesn't mean that's in association to the Hallows. Harry was barely listening to her. He was turning the snitch over and over in his hands, half expecting it to break open, to reveal the Resurrection Stone, to prove to Hermione that he was right, that the Deathly Hallows were real. She appealed to Ron. You don't believe in this, do you? Harry looked up. Ron hesitated. I don't know. I mean, well, bits of it sort of fit together, said Ron awkwardly. But when you look at the whole thing, he took a deep breath. I think we're supposed to get rid of Horcruxes, Harry. That's what Dumbledore told us to do. Maybe we should just forget about this Hallows business. Thank you, Ron, said Hermione. I'll take first watch. And she strode past Harry and sat down in the tent entrance, turning the action into a fierce, full stop. But Harry hardly slept that night. The idea of the Deathly Hallows had taken possession of him, and he could not rest while agitating thoughts whirled through his mind. The wand, the stone, and the cloak. If he could just possess them all. I open at the close. But what was the close? Why couldn't he have the stone now? If only he had the stone, he could ask Dumbledore these questions in person. And Harry murmured words to the snitch in the darkness, trying everything, even Parseltongue, but the golden ball would not open. Idiot. It's time for John's premonition. I think the snitch will open at the end of the whole story. I think it'll open after he's finished off Voldemort or whatever happens at the end. That's what I think will happen. At the close of everything, at the close of the story, that's when it'll open up, and there will be something special from Voldemort or his parents in there. That's what I think. And the wand, the Elder Wand, where was that hidden? Where was Voldemort searching now? Harry wished his scar would burn and show him Voldemort's thoughts, because for the first time ever, he and Voldemort were united in wanting the very same thing. Hermione would not like that idea, of course, but then she did not believe. Xenophilius had been right, in a way. Limited, narrow, close-minded. The truth was that she was scared of the idea of the Deathly Hallows, especially of the Resurrection Stone, and Harry pressed his mouth again to the snitch, kissing it, nearly swallowing it, but the cold metal did not yield. Something special from Dumbledore in there. Yeah. Something special from Voldemort. Voldemort's like, I just want him to feel real nice at the end when he destroys me. It was nearly dawn when he remembered Luna. Oh yeah, alone in a cell in Azkaban, surrounded by Dementors. And he suddenly felt ashamed of himself. He had forgotten all about her in his feverish contemplation of the Hallows. If only they could rescue her. But Dementors in those numbers would be virtually unassailable. Now he came to think about it. He had not yet tried casting a Patronus with the Blackthorn wand. He must try that in the morning. If only there was a better way of... if only there was a way of getting a better wand. And desire for the Elder Wand, the Death Stick, unbeatable, invincible, swallowed him once more. They packed up the tent next morning and moved on through a dreary shower of rain. The downpour pursued them to the coast, where they pitched the tents that night, and persisted through the whole week, through sodden landscapes which Harry found bleak and depressing. He could think only of the Deathly Hallows. It was as though a flame had been lit inside him that nothing, not Hermione's flat disbelief, nor Ron's persistent doubts, could extinguish. And yet the fiercer the longing for the Hallows burned inside him, the less joyful it made him. He blamed Ron and Hermione. Their determined indifference was as bad as the relentless rain for dampening his spirits, but neither could erode his certainty, which remained absolute. Harry's belief in and longing for the Hallows consumed him so much that he felt quite isolated from the other two and their obsession with the Horcruxes. Ah, come on. They just got unity. You gotta put division in there right away. Ah. Obsession, said Hermione, in a low, fierce voice, when Harry was careless enough to use the word one evening, after Hermione had told him off for his lack of interest in locating more Horcruxes. We're not the ones with an obsession, Harry. We're the ones trying to do what Dumbledore wanted us to do. But he was impervious to the veiled criticism. Dumbledore had left the sign of the Hallows for Hermione to decipher, and he had also, Harry remained convinced of it, left the Resurrection Stone hidden in the Golden Snitch. Neither can live while the other survives. Master of Death. Why didn't Ron and Hermione understand? The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death, Harry quoted calmly. I thought it was you-know-who. I thought it was you-know-who we were supposed to be fighting, Hermione retorted, and Harry gave up on her. Even the mystery of the silver doe, which the other two insisted on discussing, seemed less important to Harry now. A vaguely interesting sideshow. Oh, come on, Harry! Although it's understandable, but come on! Come on, Harry! Don't go after it! Don't... what is it? What are they called? Don't go after the Hallows! Go after the Horcruxes! My name is Dumbledore! Come follow me! Go after the Horcruxes! Destroy them before Voldemort gets to them! Okay, the only other thing that mattered to him was that his scar had began to prickle again, although he did all he could to hide this fact from the other two. He sought solitude whenever it happened, but was disappointed by what he saw. The visions he and Voldemort were sharing had changed in quality. They'd become blurred, shifting as though they were moving in and out of focus. Harry was just able to make out the indistinct features of an object that looked like a skull, and something like a mountain that was more shadow than substance. Used to images sharp as reality, Harry was disconcerted by the change. He was worried that the connection between himself and Voldemort had been damaged, a connection that he both feared and, whatever he had told Hermione, prized. Somehow, Harry connected these unsatisfying, vague images with the destruction of his wand, as if it was the Blackthorn wand's fault that he could no longer see into Voldemort's mind as well as before. As the weeks crept on, Harry could not help but notice, even through his new self-absorption, that Ron seemed to be taking charge. Perhaps because he was determined to make up for having walked out on them. Perhaps because Harry's descent into listlessness galvanized his dormant leadership qualities. Ron was the one now, encouraging and exhorting the other two into action. 3 Horcruxes left, he kept saying. We need a plan of action. Come on! Where haven't we looked? Let's go through it again. The orphanage. Diagon Alley. Hogwarts. The Riddle House. Borgin and Burke's. Albania. Every other place that they knew Tom Riddle had ever lived or worked, visited, or murdered in, Ron and Hermione raked over them again. Harry joining in only to stop Hermione pestering him. He would have been happy to sit alone in silence, trying to read Voldemort's thoughts, to find out more about the Elder Wand. But Ron insisted on journeying to ever more unlikely places, simply, Harry was aware, to keep them moving. Yeah, go Ron, indeed. You never know, was Ron's constant refrain. Upper Flagley is a wizarding village. He might have wanted to live there. Let's go and have a poke around. These frequent forays into wizarding territory brought them within occasional sight of Snatchers. Some of them are supposed to be as bad as Death Eaters, said Ron. The lot that got me were a bit pathetic, but Bill reckons some of them are really dangerous. They said on Potter Watch. On what? Said Harry. Oh, Potter Watch. Didn't I tell you that's what it was called? The program I keep trying to get on the radio. The only one that tells the truth about what's going on. Nearly all the programs are following you-know-whose line. All except Potter Watch. I really want you to hear it, but it's tricky tuning in. Ron spent evening after evening using his wand to beat out various rhythms on top of the wireless while the dials whirled. Occasionally, they would catch snatches of advice on how to treat dragonpox, and once, a few bars of A Cauldron Full of Hot, Strong Love. While he tapped, Ron continued to try to hit on the correct password, muttering strings of random words underneath his breath. They're normally something to do with the order, he told them. Bill had a real knack for guessing them. I'm bound to get one in the end. But not until March did luck favor Ron at last. Harry was sitting in the tent entrance, on guard duty, staring idly at a clump of grape hyacinths that had forced their way through the chilly ground, when Ron shouted excitedly from inside the tent, "I've got it! I've got it! Oh, password was Albus! Get in here, Harry!" Roused for the first time in days from his contemplation of the Deathly Hallows, Harry hurried back inside the tent to find Ron and Hermione kneeling on the floor beside the little radio. Hermione, who had been polishing the sword of Gryffindor just for something to do, was sitting open-mouthed, staring at the tiny speaker from which a most familiar voice was issuing. Who is this saying this? Lee Jordan. Lee Jordan. That was the Australian dude, right? Pretty sure it is. Pretty sure. Apologize for a temporary absence from the airwaves, which was due to a number of house calls in our area by those charming Death Eaters. But that's Lee Jordan. But that's Lee Jordan, said Hermione. I know, beamed Ron. Cool, eh? Now found ourselves another secure location, Lee was saying, and I'm pleased to tell you that 2 of our regular contributors have joined me here this evening. Evening, boys. Hi. Evening, River. Okay, you want to give me some, for these 2 people, do you want to give me some adjectives for River and for the other person, please? Welcome, Neman Game. Neman Game, welcome. Evening, River. River? That's Lee, Ron explained. They've all got code names, but you can usually tell. Oh, okay, so Lee's name is River, and then there's 2 other people. Old, here we go. Old joke, here we go. Old joke. Okay. Shh, said Hermione. Before we hear from Royal and Romulus, Lee went on, let's take a moment to report those deaths that the Wizarding Wireless Network News and the Daily Prophet don't think important enough to mention. It is with great regret that we inform our listeners of the murders of Ted Tonks and Dirk Cresswell. No, Tonks' mum. Dad, I mean. Oh, that sucks. I feel bad for Tonks. Don't know the dude. Don't feel too sad about the dude, because we only saw him very briefly. Seemed like a nice guy. Oh no, he was also in the forest. He was that dude too. Oh, it's the 2 guys from the forest. Oh, that sucks. Ah, it sucks so bad. Oh, we did know them better. And I thought Dirk was suspicious, but oh well. I feel bad. That sucks. And they were on the run the whole time. How'd they get caught? And then those 3 orcs or trolls also, or where were they? Anyway, I hope they didn't get killed too. Harry felt a sick swooping in his belly. He, Ron, and Hermione gazed at one another in horror. A goblin by the name of Gornuk was also killed. It is believed that Muggle-born Dean Thomas and a second goblin, both believed to have been travelling with Tonks, Cresswell, and Gornuk, may have escaped. If Dean is listening, or if anyone else has knowledge of his whereabouts, his parents and sisters are desperate for news. Meanwhile, in Gadley, a Muggle family of 5 has been found dead in their home. Muggle authorities are attributing the deaths to a gas leak, but members of the Order of the Phoenix inform me that it was a killing curse. More evidence, as if it were needed, of the fact that Muggle slaughter is becoming little more than a recreational sport under the new regime. So, okay. So, one of the goblins was killed. Dean Thomas, second goblin, have escaped. Okay, good. Dean Thomas. Indistinct Dean Thomas has survived. The cockroach, the cockroach of the wizarding world. He's the Better Call Saul of the wizarding world. He just survives. Okay. Gadley, Muggle family of 5 is dead in their home. It's indistinct who. Okay, let's keep going. Finally, we regret to inform our listeners that the remains of Bathilda Bagshot have been discovered in Godric's Hollow. The evidence is that she died several months ago. The Order of the Phoenix informs us that her body showed unmistakable signs of injuries inflicted by dark magic. Listeners, I'd like to invite you now to join us in a minute's silence in memory of Ted Tonks, Dirk Cresswell, Bathilda Bagshot, Gornick, and the unnamed, but no less regrettable, Muggles murdered by the Death Eaters. Silence fell, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione did not speak. Half of Harry yearned to hear more. Half of him was afraid of what might come next. It was the first time he had felt fully connected to the outside world for a long time. "Thank you," said Lee's voice. There we go. Ted Tonks. "Thank you," said Lee's voice. And now, we return to regular contributor Royal for an update on how the new Wizarding Order is affecting the Muggle world. "Thanks, River," said an unmistakable voice, deep, measured, reassuring. "Kingsley!" burst out Ron. "We know," said Hermione, hushing him. "Muggles. His voice is so deep. There we go. Okay. Muggles remain ignorant of the source of their suffering as they continue to sustain heavy casualties," said Kingsley. "However, we continue to hear truly inspirational stories of wizards and witches risking their own safety to protect Muggle friends and neighbors, often without the Muggles' knowledge. I'd like to appeal to all our listeners to emulate their example, perhaps by casting a protective spell over any Muggle dwellings in your street. Many lives could be saved if such simple measures are taken." What would you say, Royal, to those listeners who reply that in these dangerous times it should be wizards first? Asked Lee. "I'd say that it's one short step from wizards first to purebloods first, and then to Death Eaters," replied Kingsley. "We're all human, aren't we? Every human life is worth the same, and worth saving." "Excellently put, Royal. And you've got my vote for Minister for Magic if we ever get out of this mess," said Lee. And now, over to Romulus for a popular feature, Pals of Potter. Pals of Potter. "Thanks, River," said another familiar voice. Ron started to speak, but Hermione forestalled him in a whisper. "We know it's Lupin." "Lupin! Lupin! Lupin! I love you, Lupin!" "Romulus, do you maintain, as you have every time you appeared on our program..." "Oh no, Romulus, do you maintain, as you have every time you've appeared on our program, that Harry Potter is still alive?" "I do," said Lupin firmly. "There is no doubt at all in my mind that his death would be proclaimed as widely as possible by the Death Eaters if it had happened, because it would strike a deadly blow at the morale of those resisting the new regime. The boy who lived remains a symbol of everything for which we are fighting: the triumph of good, the power of innocence, the need to keep resisting." I like this. I like this whole separate subgroup of resistance people. I just like this. It's fun. It's fun, and it shows resilience and character. So that's why I like it a lot. A mixture of gratitude and shame welled up in Harry. Had Lupin forgiven him? then, for the terrible things he had said when they had last met. What would you say to Harry if you knew he was listening, Romulus?
I tell him we're all with him in spirit,
said Lupin. Then hesitated slightly.
And I tell him to follow his instincts, which are good and nearly always right.
Harry looked at Hermione, whose eyes were full of tears. Nearly always right, she repeated. Oh, I didn't tell you. Oh, didn't I tell you? Said Ron in surprise. Bill told me Lupin's living with Tonks again, and apparently she's getting pretty big too. And our usual update on those friends of Harry Potter's who are suffering for their allegiance, Lee was saying.
Well, as regular listeners will know, several of the more outspoken supporters of Harry Potter have now been imprisoned, including Xenophilius Lovegood, erstwhile editor of the Quibbler, said Lupin.
At least he's still alive, muttered Ron.
We have also heard within the last few hours that Rubus Hagrid...
All three of them gasped, and so, please no, and so nearly missed the rest of the sentence.
Well-known gamekeeper at Hogwarts School has narrowly escaped arrest within the grounds of Hogwarts.
Yes!
Where he is rumoured to have hosted a support Harry Potter party in his house. However, Hagrid was not taken into custody and is, we believe, on the run.
Okay, first of all, love Hagrid. He's having a party, support Harry Potter party in his house. Something happened. Everybody okay over there? That sounded like somebody falling in the shower right next to me. I'm sorry about this, but I'm going to check this for a second. All good. All good. Just, wanted to make sure that nobody fell and cracked the neck in the shower. All right. Okay. Okay, so Hagrid escaped. Good. But he's on the run too. Wow. They're all split. They're all in danger. I suppose it helps when escaping from Death Eaters, if you've got a 16-foot-high half-brother, asked Lee.
It would tend to give you an edge,
agreed Lupin gravely.
May I just add that while we here at Potterwatch applaud Hagrid's spirit, we would urge even the most devoted of Harry supporters against following Hagrid's lead. Support Harry Potter parties are unwise in the present climate.
Indeed they are, Romulus, said Lee. So we suggest that you continue to show your devotion to the man with a lightning scar by listening to Potterwatch. And now, let's move to news concerning the wizard, who's proving just as elusive as Harry Potter. We like to refer to him as the Chief Death Eater. And here to give his views on some of the more insane rumours circulating about him, I'd like to introduce a new correspondent, Rodent. Rodent? Said yet another familiar voice, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione cried out together, Fred! They're all like, it's like a little reunion in the middle of the book. No, is it George? No, is it George? It's Fred, I think, said Ron, leaning in closer. As whichever twin it was said, I'm not being Rodent. No way. I told you I wanted to be Rapier. Oh, all right then, Rapier. Could you please give us your take on the various stories we've been hearing about the Chief Death Eater? Yes, River, I can, said Friend. As our listeners will know, I'm doing the Australian. It's so hard to get out of the Australian. It's really hard to go from like British to Australian. It's similar. Yes, River, I can. It's more Cockney, there we go. Yes, River, I can, said Friend. As our listeners will know, unless they've taken refuge at the bottom of a garden pond or somewhere similar, you know whose strategy of remaining in the shadows is creating a nice little climate of panic. Mind you, if all the alleged sightings of him are genuine, We must have a good 19 you-know-who's running around the place.
Which suits him, of course,
said Kingsley.
The air of mystery is creating more terror than actually showing himself.
Agreed, said Fred. So people, let's try and calm down a bit. Things are bad enough without inventing stuff as well. For instance, this new idea that you-know-who can kill with a single glance from his eyes. That's a basilisk, listeners. One simple test. Check whether the thing that's glaring at you has got legs. If it has, it's safe to look into its eyes. Although, if it really is you-know-who, that's still likely to be the last thing you ever do. For the first time in weeks and weeks, Harry was laughing. He could feel the weight of tension leaving him. Rapier, right. No, it's not pronounced like that. I just said it quickly, but I know what a rapier is. I just forgot. For the first time in weeks and weeks... Oh, he's laughing. And the rumours that he keeps being sighted abroad? Asked Lee. Well, who wouldn't want a nice little holiday after all the hard work he's been putting in? Asked Fred. Point is, people don't get lulled into a false sense of security, thinking he's out of the country. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. But the fact remains, he can move faster than Severus Snape confronted with shampoo when he wants to. So don't... That's good. So don't count on him being a long way away if you're planning on taking any risks. I never thought I'd hear myself say it, but safety first. Thank you very much for those wise words. Rapier, said listeners. Listeners, that brings us to the end of another Potter Watch. We don't know when it will be possible to broadcast again, but you can be sure we shall be back. Keep twiddling those dials. Keep twiddling those dials. The next password will be Mad Eye. Keep each other safe. Keep faith. Good night. The radio's dial twirled and the lights behind the tuning panel went out. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were still beaming. Hearing familiar, friendly voices was an extraordinary tonic. Harry had become so used to their isolation, he had nearly forgotten that other people were resisting Voldemort. It was like waking from a long sleep. Good, eh? Said Ron happily. Brilliant, said Harry. It's so brave of them, sighed Hermione admiringly. If they were found... Well, they keep on the move, don't they? Said Ron. Like us. But did you hear what Fred said? Asked Harry excitedly. Now the broadcast was over, his thoughts turned again towards his all-consuming obsession. He's abroad. He's still looking for the wand. I knew it. Harry. Come on, Hermione. Why are you so determined not to admit it? Harry, no! De Mort's after the Elder Wand. The name's taboo, Ron bellowed, leaping to his feet as a loud crack sounded outside the tent. Uh-oh. I told you, Harry. I told you we can't say it anymore. We've got to put the protection back around us quickly. It's how they find... But Ron stopped talking, and Harry knew why. The sneakoscope on the table had lit up and began to spin. Oh, shoot. They could hear voices coming nearer and nearer. Rough, excited voices. Ron pulled the illuminator out of his pocket and clicked it. Their lamps went out. Oh, man, you idiot, Harry.
Come out of there with your hands up,
came a rasping voice through the darkness.
We know you're in there. You've got 6 wands pointing at you, and we don't care who we curse.
End of chapter. I can't stand Harry's pride sometimes. He's got a pride and arrogance to him. The negative qualities of Harry. I can't stand it sometimes. He always gets him in trouble like this. It's so annoying. Chapter 23. Malfoy Manor. Okay. Harry looked round at the other two. now mere outlines in the darkness. He saw Hermione point her wand, not towards the outside, but into his face. She is just so pissed off at him that she just straight up blasts him to the face. The bookends. He saw her... There was a bang, a burst of white light, and he buckled in agony, unable to see. He could feel his face swelling rapidly under his hands as heavy footfalls surrounded him.
Get up, vermin!
Unknown hands dragged Harry roughly off the ground. Before he could stop them, someone had rummaged through his pockets and removed the blackthorn wand. Harry clutched at his excruciatingly painful face, which felt unrecognizable beneath his fingers, tight, swollen, and puffy, as though he had suffered some violent allergic reaction. His eyes had been reduced to slits through which he could barely see. His glasses fell off as he was bundled out of the tent. All he could make out were the blurred shapes of 4 or 5 people wrestling Ron and Hermione outside too.
Get off her!
Ron shouted. There was the unmistakable sound of knuckles hitting flesh. Ron grunted in pain, and Hermione screamed, "No! Leave him alone! Leave him alone!"
Your boyfriend's going to have worse than that done to him if he's on my list,
said the horrible, familiar, rasping voice.
Delicious girl. What a treat. Oh, I do enjoy the softness of the skin.
Oh, what a creep. Creep McGee. Harry's stomach turned over. He knew who this was. Fenrir Greyback. Oh, the wolf. I thought this was the guy that took care of Xenophilius. Fenrir Greyback, the werewolf who was permitted to wear Death Eater robes in return for his hired savagery. "Search the tent!" said another voice. Harry was thrown, face down, onto the ground. A thud told him that Ron had been cast down beside him. "You stupid idiot, Harry. The hell would you use his name when you knew that it's cursed and would lead people to you? You idiot!" They could hear footsteps and crashes. The men were pushing over chairs inside the tent as they searched.
"Now, let's see who we've got,"
said Greyback's gloating voice from overhead. I think that was his voice. And Harry was rolled over onto his back. A beam of wand light fell onto his face, and Greyback laughed.
"I'll be needing butterbeer to wash this one down. What happened to you, ugly?"
Harry did not answer immediately.
"I said,"
repeated Greyback, and Harry received a blow to the diaphragm that made him double over in pain.
"What happened to you?"
"Stung," Harry murmured. "Been stung."
"Yeah, looks like it,"
said a second voice.
"What's your name?"
snarled Greyback. "Dudley," said Harry.
"And your first name?"
Vernon Dudley." You picked Vernon Dudley, hey?
"Check the list, Scabior,"
said Greyback, and Harry heard him move sideways to look down at Ron instead.
"What about you, Ginger?"
Stan Shunpike," said Ron. "Like hell you are," said the man called Scabior.
"We know Stan Shunpike. He's put a bit of work our way."
There was another thud. "Body," said Ron, and Harry could tell that his mouth was full of blood. "Body Weebly." "Barty? Percy? Is he trying to say Percy? Barty Weasley?"
"A Weasley,"
rasped Greyback.
So you're related to blood traitors, even if you're not a mudblood. And lastly, your pretty little friend."
The relish in his voice made Harry's flesh crawl.
"Easy, Greyback," said Scabior, over the jeering of the others. "Oh, I'm not going to bite just yet. We'll see if she's a bit quicker at remembering her name than Barney. Who are you, girlie?
Penelope Clearwater, said Hermione. She sounded terrified, but convincing.
What's your blood status?
Half-blood, said Hermione. Easy enough to check, said Scabier. But the whole lot of them look like they could still be Hogwarts age. We blept. We blept? I don't know what that means. Oh, we've left, maybe? Said Ron. Left have ya, Ginger, said Scabier. And you decided to go camping. And you thought, just for a laugh, you'd use the Dark Lord's name. Not a laugh, said Ron. I didn't. Accident. There was more jeering laughter.
You know who used to like using the Dark Lord's name, Weasley, growled Greyback. The Order of the Phoenix. Mean anything to you?
No.
Well, they don't show the Dark Lord proper respect. The name's been tabooed. A few Order members have been tracked that way. We'll see. Bind them up with the other 2 prisoners.
Someone yanked Harry up by the hair, dragged him a short way, pushed him down into a sitting position, then started binding him back to back with other people. Oh, there's other people? Harry was still half blind, barely able to see anything through his puffed up eyes. When at last the man tying them had walked away, Harry whispered to the other prisoners, Anyone still got a wand? No, said Ron and Hermione from either side of him. This is all my fault. I said the name. I'm sorry. Harry? It was a new but familiar voice, and it came from directly behind Harry, from the person tied to Hermione's left. Dean? He survived. He survived. Penelope. Oh, Percy's girlfriend's in book 2 and 3. Right. Okay. It is you. They find out who they've got. Oh yeah, it is you. If they find out who they've got, they're snatchers. They're only looking for truants to sell for gold. Hey, Keanu.
Not a bad little haul for one night,
Greyback was saying, as a pair of hobnailed boots marched close by Harry, and they heard more crashes from inside the tent.
A mudblood, a runaway goblin, and 3 truants. You checked their names on a list yet, Scabier?
He roared. Yeah, there's no Vernon Dudley on here, Greyback.
Interesting, said Greyback. That's interesting.
He crouched down beside Harry, who saw through the infinitesimal gap left between his swollen eyelids, a face covered in matted grey hair and whiskers, with pointed brown teeth and sores at the corners of his mouth. Greyback smelled as he had done at the top of the tower where Dumbledore had died, of dirt, sweat, and blood.
So, you aren't wanted then, Vernon? Or are you on that list under a different name? What house were you in at Hogwarts?
Slytherin, said Harry automatically. Funny how they all thinks we wants to hear that, jeered Scabier out of the shadows. But none of them can tell us where the common room is. It's in the dungeons, said Harry clearly. You enter through the wall. It's full of skulls and stuff, and it's under the lake, so the light's all green. There was a short pause. Well. Looks like we really have caught us little Slytherin, said Scabier. Good for you, Vernon. 'Cause there ain't a lot of mudblood Slytherins. Who's your father? He works at the ministry, Harry lied. He knew that this whole story would collapse with the smallest investigation, but on the other hand, he only had until his face regained its usual appearance before the game was up in any case. Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes. You know what, Greyback, said Scabior. I think there is a Dudley in there. Harry could barely breathe. Could luck, sheer luck, get them safely out of this?
Well,
said Greyback, and Harry could hear the tiniest note of trepidation in that callous voice, and knew that Greyback was wondering whether he had indeed just attacked and bound the son of a ministry official. Harry's heart was pounding against the ropes around his ribs. He would not have been surprised to know that Greyback could see it.
If you're telling the truth, Ugly, you've got nothing to fear from a trip to the ministry. I expect your father'll reward us just for picking you up.
But, said Harry, his mouth bone dry, if you just let us... Hey! Came a shout from inside the tent. Look at this, Greyback! A dark figure came bustling towards them, and Harry saw a glint of silver in the lights of their wands. They had found Gryffindor's sword. Ay.
Very nice,
said Greyback appreciatively, taking it from his companion.
Oh, very nice indeed. Looks goblin-made, that. Where did you get something like this?
It's my father's, Harry lied, hoping against hope that it was too dark for Greyback to see the name etched just below the hilt. We borrowed it to cut firewood. Hang on a minute, Greyback. Look at this! In the Prophet! Oh, it's Scabior. I thought it was somebody else. As Scabior said it, Harry's scar, which was stretched tight across his distant forehead, burned savagely. More clearly than he could make out anything around him, he saw a towering building, a grim fortress, jet black and forbidding. Voldemort's thoughts had suddenly become razor sharp again. He was gliding toward the gigantic building with a sense of calmly euphoric purpose.
So close. So close.
With a huge effort of will, Harry closed his mind to Voldemort's thoughts, pulling himself back to where he sat, tied to Ron, Hermione, Dean, and Griphook in the darkness, listening to Greyback and Scabior. This is intense. How are they going to get out of this? I have no idea. Hermione Granger, Scabior was saying. The Mudblood, who's known to be travelling with Harry Potter. Wait, what are they reading again? Let's see. Oh, the Prophet. Harry's scar burned in the silence, but he made a supreme effort to keep himself present, not to slip into Voldemort's mind. He heard the creak of Greyback's boots as he crouched down in front of Hermione. Oh, Greyback.
You know what, little girlie? This picture looks a hell of a lot like you.
It isn't me! Hermione's terrified squeak was as good as confession.
Known to be traveling with Harry Potter,
repeated Greyback quietly. A stillness had settled over the scene. Harry's scar was exquisitely painful, but he struggled with all his strength against the pull of Voldemort's thoughts. It had never been so important to remain in his own right mind.
Well, this changes things, doesn't it?
Whispered Greyback. Nobody spoke. Harry sensed the gang of Snatchers watching, frozen, and felt Hermione's arm trembling against his. Greyback got up and took a couple of steps to where Harry sat, crouching down again to stare closely at his misshapen features.
What's that on your forehead, Vernon?
He asked softly, his breath foul in Harry's nostrils as he pressed a filthy finger to the taut scar. "Don't touch it!" Harry yelled. He could not stop himself. He thought he might be sick from the pain of it.
I thought you wore glasses, Potter,
breathed Greyback. "I found glasses!" yelped one of the Snatchers skulking in the background. "There were glasses in the tent! Greyback, wait!" And seconds later, Harry's glasses had been rammed back onto his face. The Snatchers were closing in now, peering at him.
"It is,"
rasped Greyback.
"We've caught Potter."
They all took several steps backwards, stunned by what they had done. Harry, still fighting to remain present inside his own splitting head, could think of nothing to say. Fragmented visions were breaking across the surface of his mind. How are they going to get out of this one? He was gliding around the high walls of the Black Fortress. No, it was Harry, tied up and wandless in grave danger.
Looking up to the topmost window, the highest tower.
It was Harry, and they were discussing his fate in low voices.
"Time to fly."
"To the Ministry."
"To hell with the Ministry,"
growled Greyback.
"They'll take the credit, and we won't get a look in. I say we take him straight to you know who."
"Will you summon him?" "Yeah," said Scabier, sounding awed, terrified.
"No,"
snarled Greyback.
"I haven't got... they say he's using the Malfoy's place as a base. We'll take the boy there."
Harry thought he knew why Greyback was not calling Voldemort. The werewolf might be allowed to wear Death Eater robes when they wanted to use him, but only Voldemort's inner circle were branded with the Dark Mark. Greyback had not been granted this highest honor. Harry's scar seared again.
"And he rose into the night, flying straight up to the window at the very top of the tower."
"Completely sure it's him, because if it ain't Greyback, we're dead."
"Who's in charge here?"
roared Greyback, covering his moment of inadequacy.
"I say that's Potter. And him plus his wand. That's 200,000 galleons right there. But if you're too gutless to come along, any of you, it's all for me. And with any luck, I'll get the girl thrown in." The window was the merest slit in the back rock, not big enough for a man to enter. A skeletal figure was just visible through it, curled beneath a blanket, dead or sleeping.
"All right," said Scabier. "All right, we're in. And what about the rest of them, Greyback? What'll we do with them?"
Might as well take the lot. We've got 2 mudbloods. That's another 10 galleons. Give me the sword as well. If they're rubies, that's another small fortune right there."
He's a pirate. That's basically what he is. Rubies. Talking about rubies. Welcome to your first live, Ravi. Welcome. Okay, so Voldemort's part drifting around top of the tower. There was a window not big enough for men to enter. A skeletal figure was just visible through it, curled beneath a blanket, dead or sleeping. Okay. The prisoners were dragged to their feet. Harry could hear Hermione's breathing, fast and terrified.
"Grab hold and make it tight. I'll do, Potter,"
said Greyback, seizing a fistful of Harry's hair. Harry could feel his long yellow nails scratching his scalp.
"On 3. 1, 2, 3.
They disapparated, pulling the prisoners with them. Harry struggled, trying to throw off Greyback's hand, but it was hopeless. Ron and Hermione were squeezed tightly against him on either side. He could not separate from the group, and as the breath was squeezed out of him, his scars seared more painfully still.
"Has he forced himself through the slit of a window like a snake and landed lightly as vapor inside the cell-like room?"
The prisoners lurched into one another as they landed in a country lane. Okay, I'm going to end here because obviously this is the next scene, probably at the Malfoy's place or something. But I'm ending here tonight. And I'm going to be back on Friday. Okay, so this is intense. I don't know how they're going to get out of this. Somebody going to slip up? Either they're going to slip up, they find an opportune moment to fight, or somebody's going to come to their aid, obviously. But I don't see how else they're going to get out. Well, I'm reading the sections in Voldemort's voice, Carla, you're asking, because it's him when he sees what Voldemort's seeing. And it's written like that, so just to differentiate when you're listening for that. Not too frustrated to not read before Friday? Yeah, I mean, I do want to keep on reading, but I also got a life, you know? Thanks for listening in, everybody. I'll be back on Friday for another reading. So again, I'm not reading tomorrow. Back on Friday. And I hope you have a wonderful day off. See you then. Much love. Bye-bye now.